pal.
Hey there, welcome to episode 52 of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. I'm Pete Townsend, your co-host of Money Never Sleeps, along with Owen Fitzgerald. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Ireland's fintech and financial services recruitment specialist, Top Tier Recruitment. If you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, we highly recommend you have a chat with a team at Top Tier Recruitment as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. In this episode, Owen and I caught up with Ollie Walsh, the founder and CEO of PiPiT, an Irish fintech enabling migrants to support their families back home cheaper and safer. I met Ollie after an intro from his seed investor, Kenny Estes of West Loop Ventures in Chicago, who I met on a fundraising tour with one of my advisory clients. I'd love to say Ireland's a small place, which it is, but this was a global connection by way of Hong Kong and Chicago to get me all the way back to Galway, 2-hour drive from my front door. After spending a bit of time together, Ollie asked me to join his board. Don't ask too many questions about how the great world spins, folks. Just let it spin. Away we go with episode 52 of Money Never Sleeps. Here we go again. Welcome back to Money Never Sleeps. We're on with Ollie Walsh, founder and CEO of PiPiT Global on the west coast of Ireland in Galway. Welcome to the show, Ollie.
Thank you very much.
So why don't we just get right into it? Tell us your backstory, how you got to this point, and what you're up to.
Backstory is, academically speaking, I come from a business background, which is slightly unusual. I've discovered in the startup world that most people come from a product background or software engineers and even created a product. I actually have a degree in marketing and a master's in business strategy, and I went almost immediately into consultancy, doing market research, business plans for companies. My own consultancy, that is.
That was Ingenuity, yeah?
Ingenuity, yeah.
Yeah.
Originally it was called micro-marketing. We did small businesses and marketing. I suppose my first business was actually a comic shop. Which
Needful
is
Things.
Needful Things.
I saw that on your LinkedIn profile, and I'm like, I've actually been in there before I knew you.
Oh, really?
Like back in the 90s.
Yeah. 94 to 98 we had the shop open in Galway.
Because I was at UCG, for all our listeners that still know it as, well, might know it as NUIG, but we still call it UCG, so National University of Ireland in Galway versus University College Galway. And I think UCG was the only one that took the verdict seriously that said you need to change your name, right?
Yeah, I did my master's there the year that they changed over, so it was totally confusing for everybody because nobody knew where they were going to college.
But I was there in 94 and then was back and forth between 95 and 98, 99, and I do remember seeing your shop there.
We met in the 90s, so.
We did.
What made you get into the comic book store business?
I was coming up to the end of my degree, did my degree in Athlone, RTC, as it was at the time.
Yeah.
And loved the degree, loved marketing. And then we started getting the graduate packs in, which was the big corporate brands. And I was like, I don't want to work for any of these people.
Yeah.
And I had a bit of a crisis, realising I was qualified for something I didn't want to do.
Right.
So I'd always wanted to move to Galway. So I was like, what can I do that Galway needs? So comic shop was the answer I came up with.
And what was your favorite comic book hero?
Oh, Batman.
Batman?
Yeah.
Oh, obviously.
Yeah. So I opened a comic shop with a friend of mine who had some retail experience, and through that process got to meet a lot of business people in Galway, and then started doing business plans and market research for people.
Okay.
And then after 4 years, 80-20 rule kicked in, and 80% of my income was doing business plans, but I was only spending 20% of my time on it.
Right.
And the other half of that equation was sitting behind the counter in the shop.
Okay.
So after 4 years, we wrapped it up, and I kind of went full time with the consultancy then.
Okay.
So I did. I only really closed up that consultancy last year. So it's probably 20 years or something of working.
19 off your LinkedIn profile.
All right, 19 years of working with companies, startups, scale-ups, doing strategy for them. So the friend of mine, Julian, was a co-founder of the idea for PiPiT. So he knew my business background, and he approached me to let's do some research and see if this is a good idea. So we did the research and decided it was.
And 2014 was when PiPiT initially was founded, right?
Yeah.
And that was just you and Julian at the time?
Julian and Rory Ryan. Who's
Rory Ryan.
Third co-founder. So he's our CTO. So we did a kind of a 3-year process of bootstrapping it, where we all kept our day jobs and kind of worked at PiPiT at night. And then we had a kind of a year transitionary period where, the day job was PiPiT, but working at night in consultancy to keep the mortgage paid. And it's only really the last year that we've all gone full time with PiPiT.
Okay. And tell us what PiPiT is.
PiPiT is a cash payments platform for migrants to support their families at home.
Cheaper and safer.
Cheaper and safer.
Yeah. Just for full disclosure for our listeners, I am on Ollie's board as an independent non-executive director. So this value proposition rolls right off my tongue. And I say it at least once a day these days. It feels like enabling families support their families back home cheaper and safer. Yeah. Right? It's a great proposition.
So the model is that when people move country, it's very hard to get a bank account open. So they're forced to use the likes of a big brand, Western Union type transfer, which is very expensive. So we've created a cash platform that integrates with banks and billers in developing nations, so people can lodge money to their account at home or pay bills directly for their family. And we do it much cheaper.
And why you?
Why me?
Why are you doing this?
I'm doing it. The social impact is what inspires me. I'm not particularly enamored with tech. I'm certainly not enamored with finance.
Yeah.
It's the social impact. So when for my consultancy days, I was very often offered positions in companies for equity, which I did a few times, which to various degrees of success, but this one really caught my attention because it was an opportunity to make a big social impact. So, one of our main metrics in the business is, every time somebody uses our service, more money is getting into developed nations because we're saving the migrant money. So that for us is a key metric, and for the three of us, the three founders, that's what drove us through the early years and the long hours, and it's been very much, we lead with the fact we're a social impact when we're talking to investors and we're talking to partner companies, we're recruiting people. And very quickly if that makes a difference to them. So, plenty of investors, they glaze over immediately when you say social impact, but someone sit up and pay attention, and you've got someone that's on your side.
Yeah, we talked about this a bit before, where people have that initial reaction when you start talking about social inclusion, social impact, financial inclusion, that it's charity.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No.
Talk about that for a minute.
Well, globally, more money is remitted by diaspora to developing nations than the total global aid sent by governments. So it's not a case of people being charitable or us being charitable. I mean, we're a for-profit company, but we make it as cheap as we can to support the ecosystem, which is the migrants. It's not that long ago the Irish were the migrants.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's still in living memory for most of us, family emigrating. So it was never about charity. It's about a business model and how we can make it work. And like I said, the more we grow, the more good that we're doing, which is win-win.
But I also find, because I've worked with some companies with a similar kind of social impact vision, and I actually find that it's the for-profit companies that are more than likely to be more successful and do better to support those the end user, whoever it is in this case, migrants, because they're trying to make it an effective business. So they're trying to run it properly versus the charity, it's just aid, we're just trying to help these people. Yeah. That's great, but actually you're trying to do things in the most, I suppose, effective and value-added way.
Absolutely. Charity is vital, but their sources of funds are, I suppose, limited. You get a certain amount from government, you get a certain amount of donations. But a model like ours is not limited because that flow of money is already there. So we're kind of disrupting the current flow, making some money ourselves, but getting more money out of the ground. So to put that flow into context, is about according to the World Bank, about $60 billion was remitted in cash last year internationally.
That's crazy. Like in an age now where probably in most of those countries everybody has mobile phones, but yet can't get bank accounts. But then you see everything about challenger banks and digital banks and everything like that, but yet they fundamentally aren't set up to have a bank account, and it just limits them so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we go and meet banks in this part of the world, and when you talk about social impact, they refer you to the marketing department. Whereas when you're talking to a bank in Nigeria or Ghana or Kenya, social impact is something that really means something to them, and they connect with it, and they refer you to the CEO.
Over the last 5 years, lots of lessons learned, obviously, but when was a moment along the last 5 years when you guys realized you had something?
I would think there's been a lot of micro moments, as opposed to like a big standout moment. And I think that's something you really need to be in the startup world. You really need to pay attention to those micro moments because we're so busy, we kind of miss them. A great example is myself and Julian and Rory were in a meeting one day, and we were pre-transactions. We'd never done a transaction, and in the meeting, Rory says, "Oh, somebody just did a transaction." I went, "Oh yeah, great."
Yeah.
And we kept talking, and it was like 2 hours later before we realised, like, hold on, we're now post-revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
that couple of pence we made in the transactions means we have revenue, and we almost missed it, even though we were all sitting around the table. So I mean, it's.
And did you celebrate?
Oh, we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there hasn't been a big grandstand moment, I don't think, but a lot of little successes: getting contracts signed, getting good recruitment, getting funding in.
Getting funding.
Yeah, and again, that's another example of so few companies successfully get funded, get VC funding. These are all big successes on the path. So for me, the success isn't, we all want that big exit sometime soon.
Yeah.
But it's not about just focusing on that one success. It's about every day there's some success that you can look at.
And you get that from the team, from the looks in their eyes, that kind of acknowledge that, yes, we are winning.
Absolutely. So we've 10 in our team, 8 are in Galway, 2 are in the UK, but we've daily meetings with everybody involved and progress and getting to that tipping point.
Great.
And do you think does the social impact element help on the bad days, where you're questioning the challenge of the whole thing and is it worth it?
Absolutely, that's the mission. It's. From an academic background, it's all about the mission. But when people really buy in with what we're trying to achieve here, that it's not just making money for the sake of making money or shareholder value and all that good stuff, but there's something real to be achieved.
Because the effort that obviously went in over the 3 years, whereby you were doing the other jobs and doing a night and then the reverse and trying to keep it going and doing the extra work in the evening, like you said, that mission obviously was what kept it going through those years till you got it really off the ground. Yeah,
absolutely. When you're in the middle of those years, I'm not sure you realise how tough they are until afterwards. I was doing, as well as the 2 jobs, I was spending kind of 2 days every second week in the UK. I have a 5-year-old at home, so I was minimising my time away. So leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning, getting back at 4 o'clock in the morning, just to not spend an extra night away. And once we got recruited the guys in the UK, I've only been there once since January, I think. But it's when you kind of finish that period and step back from it a bit, you realise how tired you were or how much it was actually taken out of you. But yes, absolutely, the mission keeps you going.
And what have been some of the high points, right? Those things that we talked about. You realized you had something, but in terms of just that acknowledgement. Beyond getting that first ding of revenue in, besides getting funding, besides getting that acknowledgement from staff, anything else stand out as this was big for us?
I suppose it's we started off on a strategy of we need to sign 30 or 40 small regional partners up, get some transactions going, show those metrics, and then use those to sell to bigger clients on the basis that the bigger ones would be a longer sell. And what we found was that the bigger clients actually reacted much quicker than we had anticipated. So recently we've signed a couple of big banking deals, like Sterling Bank, for example, in Nigeria, one of the big banks there. So getting like a major international bank signed for a small West of Ireland startup is a big deal. Is a big deal. So we've a lot of big deals signed. We signed a deal with PaySafe last week or week beforehand, which adds 21 countries onto our pay-in network. So essentially all of Europe except Germany. So it adds 60,000 pay-in points. So the scale that brings, or the banks. For example, we've talked to a lot of banks in the Francophile part of Africa that were keen but want France. So that deal now unlocks a lot of other stuff that was in the pipeline.
Okay. And I think I know part of the answer to this next question, but why don't you just give it the unvarnished truth? What do you think is the hardest decision you've ever made in business?
The hardest decisions, I've been involved in a few previous startups, and the decision to call it a day after putting in a lot of work, one or two that had 2 or 3 years work behind them, and it just wasn't going to work for a variety of reasons. So making a decision just to stop.
Yeah.
And the previous startup I was involved in, which I was also the CEO, I told my wife that was it now. Consulting from now on. I'm not doing any more startups.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, 18 days later we started PiP.
18 days you lasted.
It was certainly less than a month. Yeah.
And is that just a bug?
I think it must be.
Yeah.
It must be. Yeah.
Did the idea come in 18 days, or did you actually, had that been brewing for a while?
It had been brewing for a while, and Julian, we'd already done the research, and it was kind of sitting there as this is an opportunity, and we had done a business plan, and we talked to Rory, and he was happy he could set it up tech-wise, but we hadn't pushed go. Again, we all had day jobs, and I was doing this other startup as well. So once I had a week for my head to clear, I was like, actually, let's do this.
Yeah, good. No, sometimes that head clearing in 1 week can work wonders, and I'm looking forward to some of that coming up for myself.
How have you found? How did you find then? Obviously, working with the guys and coming together to put something together like that. Are they your co-founders? Are they people you knew previously, and was something you'd always looked at working with together, or
it wasn't something we'd always looked at, but I did know them previously. More socially than business-wise. So myself and Julian have worked on a couple of projects, but more as consultancy projects. And I've known Rory for probably 20 years. So when Julian approached me with the idea for PiPiT, Rory was the obvious person to go to for co-founder and CTO.
Okay. What do you think is some of the personality traits that have been helpful to you along the way?
Patience.
Yeah.
Stick-wittedness, as you Americans would call it.
Yeah, always a big one. Always a big one in my book.
Yeah, perseverance. Someone recently asked me, is it being at the right place at the right time is important? I think it's been at the right place for a long time.
Yeah.
It's what's important. Even within the last week, 2 weeks, I've had kind of people that I met maybe 4 years ago come out of the blue with an opportunity saying, I haven't forgotten about you.
Yeah.
Here's the opportunity now.
How do you keep those things afloat?
Technically wise, HubSpot is kind of is the tool we use to keep all these things going. But it is really interesting how often people kind of contact you after a long period of time saying, "I've been watching your blogs on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I've been watching your posts." So people are keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, they are.
And especially when you're a startup and you're new to market and you're talking to bigger companies and they're reluctant to deal with a startup. But when you're still there 3 years later, that builds their confidence. So a lot of the early legwork that was done 3 years ago or 5 years ago is starting to pay off now.
Yeah.
And, and combined with that then is the new people we're meeting. That whole sales process is accelerating because we're around longer and because they've heard of us. And, you walk up to somebody on a stand in a trade show and they've already heard of your company, you're 20% of the way there.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a cumulative effect, I suppose.
One thing I'm wondering about is just, yes, the personality side of it, but just how you carry yourself, right? I heard a great quote this morning from Ben Horowitz from A16Z, Silicon Valley venture capital firm. And he said, we get a lot of credit for being nice, but really, we're just winning, right? And that they are extremely helpful towards the companies that they invest in, and they're just generally, genuinely nice people for the battles they've been through. But is there a human nature element to the success of an entrepreneur and a startup that you think is important?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, in terms of your own team, but in terms of making sales and business development, and I mean, my job is, I suppose, primarily, or a lot of it is the networking part and the hustle and the getting out there and meeting people and especially internationally, the Irish charm is very effective.
It does help.
As is the Paddy Mafia when you get going as well.
Yeah, and
huge amount of support internationally from Irish diaspora.
Yeah, and do you find that the West Coast accent of Ireland is more charming internationally?
Well, I'm originally from Dublin, so my accent has been diluted over the years.
Yeah, see, I still can't hear it. I can tell the difference between a Donegal and a Cork accent, perhaps a D4 accent, but that's about it, showing my limitations here. In terms of the personality traits that might have held you back, what do you think might have been hurtful to you over the years?
Patience. Putting up with stuff for too long, maybe.
Yep.
Too much empathy. There's a balance in everything.
Yeah.
There's certainly a lot of opportunities that were probably chased too long.
It sounds like you have a good balance.
It's hard to, especially early days. You need to chase every opportunity, and like I said, some of them come back years later. But we're now at the phase where we've so many companies looking to work with us. We have to be a bit more ruthless about it. So people who aren't responsive quickly drop down our list of priorities.
Yeah, I was talking to a founder about this about 6 months ago about they were telling me their value proposition. I said, "Ooh, here's 7 ideas." And they're like, "Pete, I'm sure that's great. And I'm sure that, all 7 of those ideas would be meaningful to us, but we got to eat what's on our plate." Right. And that, keep the horses running that you have in your stable. And I'm getting all, cliche here, but how do you keep that focus? Right, to say, yes, that could be a great idea for us to pursue and go down that path, but that could be a wild goose chase.
We do it essentially through HubSpot. We have a ranking system for everybody based on their potential opportunity for PiPiT, the potential transactions, the strategic value of them as a partner, then also things like our perceived, our perception of their technical capabilities, of their marketing capabilities, their responsiveness again, the level of the person we're dealing with. So right now we've 68 companies in HubSpot in various parts of onboarding, and we have them ranked. So we review the top 20 every day, and we review all 68 every week, and they move up and down the rankings depending on how they're going, and 80% of everybody in the company's focus is on the top 20.
Yeah, that's execution rather than ideas, which is 1% versus execution 99%.
Well,
right?
it's when something comes in and they're left field and we want to do, we've had, kind of lottery companies in Pacific Islands looking to use us and say, well, what's the strategic value of the company for this? And it's low, therefore they're low down the list. We've had a lot of left field suggestions, inquiries, but unless they kind of meet our mission and meet our strategic value, it's a no.
Gotcha.
But it's really interesting actually to hear you talk about that, because I think often from a startup point of view, like you spoke earlier on about your background in business strategy and marketing, and actually often that's not the kind of makeup of some of the founders that we deal with or have on the show. But it's really clear because obviously that experience as a consultant and on the strategy side has stood to you in terms of even the way you describe going through your kind of pipeline there. That's often not what is the norm in the space, and it's any opportunity that comes in is pursued 100%. Do you find that background actually has been key to doing a lot of even simple things like doing a lot of business plans for other companies and having that as the kind of foundation for, I suppose, what you started out working in? That makes a huge difference versus being, I suppose, coming from a different background or business background.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the outside eyes concept that when you're looking in at something else, you can see the problems easier than somebody's in the middle of it. So 20 years of dealing with founders, business owners who were going down the wrong path, but had their own vision regardless of reality. Kind of you learn from other people's mistakes, I suppose, and you can kind of stand back a bit, and and plus we have a very experienced team. So I mean, we're a relatively young company, but we're a relatively mature team. So there's a lot of experience in the team, which helps.
Anything you wish you've done differently?
done differently. I think probably the big mistake we made, and what a lot of startups make, is they start way too late looking for money.
Yeah.
So I think that's a process I would have kicked off a lot earlier.
Yeah.
And when the first tranche of money comes in, you tend to relax.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. You should look for the second tranche of money the next day.
Yeah.
Always fundraising, isn't it?
Always fundraising.
Yeah.
Well, when we got the VC funding in, I thought I'd have, a little bit of headspace on the fundraising. And our first meeting with our VC board member, question 1 was, what's the plan for Series A?
Exactly.
And question 2 was, what's the plan for Series B?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just getting tight on money is always a problem.
Absolutely. And a shout out to that VC board member, Kenny Estes from Westloop Ventures.
Yep, absolutely.
Which was a serendipitous introduction for you and one for me as well on my path to moving towards what we're working on now. But that's a story for another day. Who do you lean on?
Who do I lean on? Mostly probably my wife.
Good.
My staunchest ally and fiercest critic.
Yes.
So, no, again, in the balance of life, very important to have non-business support, which I definitely have. I know people who don't have that.
Do you talk shop to her?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
she's bang up to date.
Yeah, and she's an advisor, I would expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I suppose internally, for a financial technology company, I'm neither finance nor technology. So, with Rory's top of his game in CTO. So I'm not really involved in technology. It's like, this is what we need to do, and he makes it happen.
Yeah.
The financial side, I'm obviously a lot more involved in, especially in the fundraising. So Kevin McSherry is our CFO. So I would lean on him quite a lot because, finance is a dark art.
It is. Much like karate.
Well, when you go into fundraising and things that seemingly simple, like cap tables, have depths to them that I never understood.
Yes.
So
having met Kevin McSherry and spending some time with him, and one of my favorite CFOs over the years, Stephen Jacobs, who I worked with for a very long time at BNP Paribas, I see an extreme similarity between Kevin and Stephen.
Right, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do get that dark art thing.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Who leans on you?
Well, I suppose everybody to a certain extent. We tried to keep everything as collaborative as possible. So, I make sure that I'm available for everybody if they need anything. So, it's interesting when you kind of get to a certain point. What is the role of the CEO exactly? But it's really to make sure everybody else is happy.
Yeah.
That's a challenge in itself, though, at an early stage. I know I worked previously in a fintech startup, and the energy came from the CEO. So, and a lot of the time, actually, because he was traveling so much, he'd often be sick or, just be lower energy from traveling through the night or whatever. And you would notice it.
Yeah.
Because that drive came from him. I suppose, do you find then that you, as CEO, you always have to be, I suppose, on your game?
Always, absolutely. I'm fortunate that I'm generally an optimist and maintain a good mood most of the time, and I think that rubs off on people as well.
What do you think keeps you going when yesterday was the toughest day of your life and today you just got a stomach punch?
I think it's the bug we mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
It's the perseverance, but it's the mission. Yeah.
And how do you see that changing over the next few years in terms of society at large, and why what you're doing with PiPiT is becoming more and more important?
Well, the migration market, the diaspora market is growing. What we see is a huge amount of tech companies for money transfer, various apps, etc. But they pretty much all start with the premise that the sender has a bank account or some way to get money into this app.
Yeah.
So, we're a very collaborative company. I'm very collaborative in my own approach. So we see all these companies as collaborators, not as competitors.
Absolutely.
So it's for us. It's a growth. It's a scale piece. It's working with as many companies as we can, ultimately to support the migrant, but on a win-win basis. I was in a meeting early days of this, where somebody said to me from one of the big four, will say that, it's a good deal when everybody feels a bit aggrieved, and I don't agree with that. Aggrieved, yeah. If everybody feels a little bit aggrieved, you've got a good deal. I firmly believe in win-win, that what we can do is good for us, it's good for our merchant partners, it's good for migrant
and beneficiary.
Yeah, the aggrieved side of it sounds more like something what Donald Trump would say.
Yeah. Wasn't him.
I'm not shy about that.
So usually I like to ask the question, and I've missed the last few episodes, but I'm back now to ask it. Tell us something people wouldn't expect to know about you.
I don't know if there's much people wouldn't expect to know. I'm a fairly open book, but I've been studying Tai Chi for about 15 years, so that can tend to surprise people. Apart from that, I don't know. The comic shop was surprised a lot of people as well.
And what got you into Tai Chi? Or
one of my other previous businesses was a martial arts shop, which I owned with two friends of mine. It was called Three Masters, which was also in Galway. So I did karate for a while and kung fu for a while, and I tried Tai Chi just to test it out, and I really liked it. And it's in terms of headspace and relaxing and meditation, it's great. And my wife's a yoga teacher, so there's a lot of that. Eastern philosophy knocking around my house.
Yeah, there is a trend of spirituality on this podcast in terms of startup founders finding ways to relax their heads.
Yeah.
Right. We had Graham Rodford on from Archax about 10 episodes ago, and he was talking about meditation. Right. And I was just, when I asked him the question, I was just kind of hinting towards it as to maybe it's something that he should explore. And he's like, oh, no, firm believer, and I think it's the Calm app that so many people are using. Now, I've messed around with the free version of it, but never actually, got into the paid version of it. So, but anyway, we are going to do one more question for this new segment that we've been talking about, which is tell us one person that you would like to see featured on Money Never Sleeps.
Bruce Wayne.
Can you arrange that? Let's see. We may be able to. I mean, anybody and everybody seems to be playing Bruce Wayne these days.
That's true.
So
we're bound to get one of them.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, George Clooney's been there. Michael Keaton's been there.
Let's not talk about George Clooney.
No.
In the Batman context.
Yeah. No, and sure. And then Matt Damon as Robin. But no, the Batman symmetry is amazing, because one of the main reasons that when Owen asked me to do this podcast last year that I wanted to do it was the lessons that I learned from Ollie Judge, who was, when I was working with 11FS last year, he was basically 11FS Media, and he was running that whole show, and his fascination with Batman and his dedication to Batman was just, over the roof, right? So, shout out to Ollie. You're there somewhere in Hollywood, I think, these days, but best of luck to you, buddy.
And in the event we can't get Bruce Wayne,
is there
anyone else?
Tony Stark.
Tony Stark? Okay.
Supposed to try. I mean, anyone that get through Twitter, it's worth asking.
All right. We can put our feelers out and see if Iron Man will come onto the show. I know that in addition to all of our listeners we'd have out there, we'd have at least new one with my son who loves Iron Man. So
he's available now. He's finished that gig, isn't he?
Yeah, maybe we get my son on. Be great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ollie. Appreciate you coming out to the show.
No problem.
And best of luck with PiPiT, and keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you very much.
That wraps it up, folks. Thanks to Ollie for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. To learn more about Ollie and PiPiT, check out PiPiT Global on Twitter or their website at PiPiT Global. That's PiPiT.global. If you'd like to get involved in what we do, drop us a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie or DM us on Twitter at MNSShow. As always, show notes and links are on moneyneversleeps.ie. We're on all the major podcast platforms, and remember, Money Never Sleeps is spelled as all one word. As for me, I increase the odds of startup success. DM me on Twitter at PeteTownsendNV if you want to know more. You can follow Owen on Twitter at OwenFitzgerald9. Finally, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for recording and editing this podcast. Till next time, thanks for listening. See ya.
Money never sleeps, pal.